Good morning, everyone. We all experience it. The rush of heat rising in our chest, our heart pounding, the desire to speak in words we will later regret. Anger. It comes for us all. But what if I told you that anger isn't the problem itself? It's how we allow it to consume us that stands in our way. Anger doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's a response to something deeper, something that often goes unnoticed until it manifests in an explosive way. To understand the root of anger, we must first acknowledge that it's often not the surface issue that triggers it, but rather the emotions and experiences beneath it. Think about it. When we get angry, it's rarely just about the situation at hand. It could be a small argument with a friend, a misunderstanding with a colleague, or an injustice in the world that sparks our fury. But if we take a step back, we might realize that these triggers are often connected to something far deeper. Past hurts, feelings of inadequacy, or fear of losing control. In other words, anger is often the surface level emotion, while the underlying cause might be fear, hurt, frustration, or unmet expectations. For example, when we're cut off in traffic, we might feel a rush of anger. But is it truly the driver's mistake that causes our emotional response? Or is it the feeling of being disrespected, the frustration of losing control, or perhaps even the fear of being late for an important meeting? That's the real cause. The incident itself simply acts as the spark that lights the fire of anger, but it's the emotions that were already simmering beneath the surface that fuel it. Similarly, anger can often be a defense mechanism. When we feel vulnerable, weak, or unsafe, whether physically or emotionally, our natural response can be to lash out. Anger becomes our shield, guarding us from the fear of being hurt again. It can be a way of protecting ourselves from pain, rejection, or the experience of being taken advantage of. In this sense, anger isn't necessarily a negative emotion. It's just that, when left unchecked, it becomes a distorted reaction to our deeper fears or insecurities. Understanding the root of anger means looking beyond the immediate situation and diving into what's happening within us. It requires honesty with ourselves about what we're really feeling and why we feel that way. Is it the action of another person that's making us angry, or is it something unresolved from our past? Is it the fear of not being heard or respected, or the feeling of being powerless in a situation? When we understand the deeper reasons for our anger, we no longer see it as something that happens to us randomly. Instead, we recognize it as a powerful tool, one that, when understood and managed, can help us heal, grow, and become more self-awareness. Self-reflection is a powerful practice that allows us to step back and examine our thoughts, actions, and emotions with clarity and honesty. When we experience anger, it's easy to react impulsively, allowing the emotion to take control of our actions without considering its true origin. But self-reflection gives us the opportunity to pause, slow down, and explore why we're feeling the way we do before we act. To truly reflect on our anger, we need to move beyond the surface level trigger. This requires creating a space of stillness, even if it's just for a few moments. It's in this space that we can examine the situation that caused our anger, but also the emotional context surrounding it. What were we really feeling in that moment? Were we frustrated, scared, unheard, or perhaps even jealous? Self-reflection asks us to sit with those emotions, not to judge them or push them away, but to understand them fully. When we reflect on our emotional responses, we begin to see patterns that reveal more about us than we might expect. We might realize that certain situations trigger anger more than others, or that we react more strongly to specific people or circumstances. This awareness is key. It shows us where our emotional triggers lie and provides insight into the deeper vulnerabilities within us. Are we feeling disrespected? Do we fear rejection? Are we struggling with a lack of control in our lives? These reflections help us uncover the hidden layers beneath our anger. Self-reflection also involves taking responsibility for our emotions. It's easy to blame others for how we feel, especially when we're angry. We might think, that person made me mad, or that situation wasn't fair, and that's why I'm upset. While the external circumstances may indeed play a role in our emotional reactions, self-reflection encourages us to own our response. It reminds us that no one else has the power to control how we feel unless we give them that power. In this way, self-reflection brings us back to a place of personal empowerment, where we realize that we have the ability to control our emotional responses, even in the face of frustration or anger. This process also requires vulnerability. When we reflect on our anger, we are forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It's not always easy to admit that we are feeling hurt or afraid. Sometimes the anger is a defense mechanism to protect us from confronting painful emotions like sadness, disappointment, or rejection. It's much easier to be angry than it is to be vulnerable. But self-reflection calls us to face these truths, to sit with discomfort, and to be honest about our emotional experiences. This level of vulnerability creates space for personal growth and healing. Through self-reflection, we start to notice how our anger affects not only ourselves, but also the people around us. We may recognize how our emotional outbursts can cause unnecessary strain in relationships, or how holding on to anger impacts our mental and physical well-being. By reflecting on these consequences, we gain the motivation to seek change. It becomes less about, I should stop being angry, and more about, I want to change because I recognize how this is harming me and my connections with others. Self-reflection shifts our perspective from blame to understanding, from impulsivity to intention, helping us respond to anger in healthier, more constructive ways. When we take time for self-reflection, we become more attuned to the intricate relationship between our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. We start to see that anger is not a standalone emotion, but a part of a much larger emotional landscape. Reflecting on our anger helps us better understand how to navigate all of our emotions, teaching us how to respond to each one with intention rather than reacting in the heat of the moment. You said, the power of forgiveness expended in Dante Alighieri's ending sonnet. ChatGPT said, forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools we have for healing, yet it's often the most difficult to practice. It's easy to think of forgiveness as something we offer to others, but the true power of forgiveness lies in what it does for us. Holding on to grudges, anger, and resentment might feel justified in the moment, but in the long run, it only poisons us, our peace, our joy, and our sense of self-worth. Forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongs done to us. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of past hurt. When someone hurts us, it's natural to feel betrayed, disappointed, or even enraged. In those moments, forgiveness might feel like an impossible request, as though it's asking us to erase the pain or pretend like nothing happened. But forgiveness is not about pretending. It's about acknowledging the hurt, understanding the impact it had on us, and then choosing to release the emotional weight it carries. What often keeps us from forgiving is the belief that by holding on to anger, we are somehow getting justice or revenge. We think that if we forgive, we're letting the person who hurt us off the hook, and they'll never be held accountable for their actions. But in reality, holding on to anger does more harm to us than it does to them. The person who wronged us may never even be aware of the toll their actions have taken on us. But we are the ones who continue to carry that weight. By choosing forgiveness, we stop allowing the past to control our present and future. Forgiveness doesn't mean we forget the wrongdoing or ignore the consequences of someone's actions. It doesn't mean that we allow people to hurt us repeatedly. Rather, forgiveness is about releasing the emotional grip the offense has on us. When we forgive, we no longer allow the hurt to dictate how we feel or how we move forward in life. It is an act of self-liberation. In many cases, the act of forgiveness is about making peace with the past. Sometimes the people who hurt us might not even be alive anymore, or they might never apologize. In these cases, forgiveness is less about the other person and more about finding closure for ourselves. When we hold on to anger towards someone who has hurt us, we keep them alive in our hearts and minds. But forgiveness allows us to let go of the grip they have on us, regardless of whether or not they ever acknowledge the pain they caused. Forgiveness is also deeply tied to empathy. When we start to understand that everyone is dealing with their own struggles, their own wounds, and their own challenges, it becomes easier to forgive. The person who hurt us may have been acting out of their own pain or fear, and while that doesn't excuse their behavior, it helps us see them as human. This shift in perspective doesn't necessarily make the hurt disappear, but it softens the edges of our anger, making it easier to release it. Another important aspect of forgiveness is the forgiveness we must give to ourselves. Often, we're our own harshest critics. We carry guilt, shame, and regret for things we've done or failed to do. But holding on to these emotions does not help us grow. It keeps us trapped in the past. We must learn to forgive ourselves for our mistakes and imperfections. Self-forgiveness is a crucial part of healing, and it's a necessary step in the journey to true emotional freedom. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. It takes time, and it doesn't always happen in one moment of epiphany. Some days we might feel as though we've forgiven someone, only to find that old anger or hurt resurface. That's okay. Forgiveness is not a one-time decision. It's a commitment we make to continually release the past and choose peace. It's an ongoing journey that requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to let go. The power of forgiveness lies in its ability to transform our hearts. When we forgive, we make room for healing, for compassion, and for peace. We reclaim our emotional freedom and release ourselves from the grip of past wrongs. In doing so, we open ourselves up to greater love, greater joy, and a future unburdened by the pain of yesterday. Anger, when harnessed correctly, can be a powerful force for transformation. Too often, we view anger as a destructive emotion, something to be suppressed or avoided. But the truth is, anger in itself is not inherently bad. It is a natural response to situations where we feel threatened, disrespected, or out of control. The problem arises when we let that anger dictate our behavior and cloud our judgment. What if, instead of letting anger control us, we could use it as fuel for something better? Transforming anger into positive energy begins with recognizing that anger, like any other emotion, is a signal. It's not something that should be ignored, dismissed, or pushed down. It's something to be understood. Anger often arises from a sense of injustice, a violation of personal boundaries, or frustration with the way things are. By taking the time to pause and reflect on what is fueling our anger, we can begin to understand its deeper message. Rather than allowing the anger to spiral out of control, we can take a moment to process it and ask ourselves, what is this anger telling me? What is the root cause of this emotion? Is it pointing out a need that hasn't been addressed? or a value that has been violated. Once we understand what's driving our anger, we can redirect that energy towards something productive. Often anger arises when we feel helpless or powerless in a situation. But when we acknowledge our feelings, we take the first step toward reclaiming our power. Instead of directing that anger outwardly in ways that harm ourselves or others, we can channel it into action. This action doesn't have to be dramatic or immediate. It can be small, intentional steps toward change. Whether it's advocating for ourselves, setting clearer boundaries, or taking concrete steps toward resolving a situation that's causing frustration, transforming anger into action empowers us to take control of our circumstances. Anger can also be used to fuel our passion for causes that are meaningful to us. For example, the anger we feel when we witness injustice or inequality can be the driving force behind social change. Instead of becoming overwhelmed or disillusioned by the negative emotions we experience, we can transform that anger into motivation to make a difference in the world. Whether it's speaking out against injustice, raising awareness, or taking part in movements that align with our values, anger can be the spark that ignites our desire to take action and create change. In the realm of personal growth, anger can serve as a catalyst for self-improvement. When we feel angered by a situation, it can point to areas of our life that need attention. Maybe it's a relationship that needs healing, a habit that needs changing, or a goal that we've been neglecting. Rather than letting the anger fester and turn inward into self-destructive thoughts, we can transform it into motivation to take proactive steps towards self-improvement. Anger can be the wake-up call that pushes us to take action toward bettering ourselves and our lives. Another way to transform anger into positive energy is by using it to fuel creativity. Many great works of art, literature, and music have been born out of frustration or anger. When we're angry, our emotions are heightened, and this intensity can be channeled into creative expression. Whether through writing, painting, dancing, or music, anger can be transformed into a powerful form of self-expression. It allows us to process our emotions in a constructive way and connect with others who may feel similarly. Creativity becomes a healthy outlet for the energy that anger generates, allowing us to express ourselves freely without harming others or ourselves. It's also important to recognize that anger can sometimes point us toward necessary changes in our lives. For example, if we find ourselves constantly angry in a particular relationship or situation, it could be a sign that something needs to shift. Anger can motivate us to reevaluate our boundaries, make tough decisions, and prioritize our well-being. It might be the driving force behind a decision to leave a toxic environment, end a relationship that no longer serves us, or pursue a new career path that aligns with our passions. Rather than letting anger stagnate in unhealthy ways, we can use it as a guide to assess what's truly important to us and make adjustments accordingly. Transforming anger into positive energy also involves understanding the power of self-care. When we are angry, our bodies are flooded with stress hormones, and this can take a toll on our mental and physical health if left unchecked. By practicing self-care, whether it's through exercise, meditation, journaling, or simply taking a moment to breathe, we can release the built-up tension caused by anger and prevent it from manifesting in destructive ways. In this sense, self-care becomes an essential part of the process of transforming anger into something more constructive. The ultimate goal of transforming anger into positive energy is not to suppress or deny our emotions, but to take control of them and use them as tools for growth, change, and creation. By acknowledging anger, understanding its root causes, and channeling it into positive action, we not only free ourselves from its negative impact, but also empower ourselves to create something better, something more meaningful. Choosing peace over reaction is one of the most profound and empowering choices we can make in life. In a world that often feels chaotic, filled with conflicts and stresses, the ability to choose peace rather than react impulsively is a true form of strength and emotional intelligence. The key to this choice lies in the space between stimulus and response. The ability to pause, reflect, and then act with intention rather than being swept away by the immediate emotional wave that rises when something triggers us. Human beings are wired to react. It's instinctive to feel frustration, anger, or anxiety when faced with situations that challenge us. When someone cuts us off in traffic, when a colleague disrespects us, or when we feel overlooked or misunderstood, the immediate emotional response is often one of frustration or defensiveness. Our bodies respond before our minds can process. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, and we might feel the desire to speak out or act on impulse. This is a natural reaction, but it is also a reaction rooted in the emotional and primal aspects of our brain, rather than our higher cognitive functions that allow for rational thought and deliberate action. This is where choosing peace comes into play. Peace is not a passive state. It's an active choice that requires conscious effort. It's not about ignoring emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not. Choosing peace is about being aware of your emotions, acknowledging them, and then deciding how you want to respond, rather than reacting in the heat of the moment. The first step in choosing peace over reaction is developing awareness. We must become aware of our emotional triggers, the things that set us off. This requires deep introspection and a commitment to understanding our own emotional landscape. Are there specific situations that make us more prone to react with anger or frustration? Do certain people make us feel defensive or insecure? Once we identify our triggers, we can begin to anticipate them and take proactive steps to manage our responses. Awareness doesn't eliminate our emotions, but it allows us to recognize them before they have the chance to overwhelm us. Once we are aware of our emotions, we can create the space to respond intentionally. When something triggers us, there is a brief moment of pause, an opportunity to choose how we respond. It may only be a fraction of a second, but that moment can make all the difference. Instead of allowing our emotions to dictate our behavior, we can choose to take a deep breath, step back, and ask ourselves, what kind of response will bring me peace in this situation? What response will serve my highest good? This brief pause allows us to shift from a place of reaction to a place of thoughtful, measured response. Choosing peace also requires emotional regulation. It means that rather than letting emotions control us, we take control of them. Emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing feelings or pretending they don't exist. It means finding healthy ways to process and express them. Instead of snapping at someone when we're upset or bottling up our frustration until it explodes, we can learn to release our emotions in ways that are more constructive. This might mean taking a walk to calm down, journaling our thoughts, or talking to someone we trust in a calm and respectful manner. Emotional regulation allows us to express ourselves without giving in to impulsivity, creating a path toward peace rather than conflict. The act of choosing peace over reaction is also deeply connected to our values. When we are triggered, it's easy to react from a place of ego, pride, or fear. We might want to protect our image, defend ourselves, or prove a point. However, when we take a step back and consider what truly matters to us, our values of kindness, compassion, respect, and integrity, we can align our response with those principles. Reacting in a way that reflects our true values helps us maintain inner peace and strengthens our sense of self-worth. It reminds us that we don't need to win every argument or prove every point. We simply need to stay grounded in what is most important to us. Choosing peace over reaction also requires compassion, not only for others, but for ourselves. When we are faced with challenging situations, it's easy to become self-critical for feeling upset or frustrated. We might think that we should have handled things better or that we're not strong enough to maintain peace. But choosing peace means accepting our emotions without judgment, allowing ourselves to be human, and giving ourselves grace when we don't respond perfectly. It's about acknowledging that we are doing the best we can in each moment, and that growth comes through practice, not perfection. Finally, choosing peace over reaction is a long-term investment in our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Reacting impulsively to every trigger can take a toll on our health. Constant stress, frustration, and anger can increase our risk for burnout, anxiety, and even physical ailments. But when we choose peace, when we cultivate a practice of pausing, reflecting, and responding with intention, we protect our mental and physical health. We create space for joy, calm, and clarity. And we can approach life's challenges with a sense of resilience and balance. Choosing peace doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It means approaching conflict with a sense of grace and control. It's not about always being calm in the traditional sense. It's about making choices that lead to long-term peace in our lives and relationships. It's about responding to challenges in a way that reflects our highest self, rather than reacting from a place of fear, anger, or defensiveness. Choosing peace is a daily practice, and each moment offers a new opportunity to decide how we want to show up in the world. Empathy and compassion are often spoken about in tandem, but they are distinct yet interconnected qualities that hold immense power in shaping the way we interact with ourselves and others. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, while compassion goes a step further, involving not just understanding, but a desire to alleviate that suffering or offer support. Both empathy and compassion are essential for creating meaningful relationships, fostering community, and nurturing a sense of shared humanity. Wow. Empathy begins with the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. It's about tuning into the emotional landscape of another person and feeling with them rather than simply for them. This doesn't mean we need to have experienced the exact same thing to understand their emotions. Empathy is about recognizing the emotional truth behind someone's experiences and being present to their emotional state, whether they are going through a period of joy, sadness, frustration, or confusion. It's about being able to connect with others on a deeply emotional level without judgment or the need to fix anything. In many ways, empathy is a bridge that connects us to other people. When we are empathetic, we acknowledge the validity of someone else's feelings and experiences. We allow space for their emotions to be seen and heard. This can be incredibly validating for the other person, as it often feels like the world is not just reflecting back their struggles, but offering understanding and solidarity. Empathy creates the foundation for deeper connection, as it allows us to let go of assumptions or judgments and truly listen to what another person is expressing. However, empathy by itself is not always enough. While it enables us to feel another person's pain or joy, it's compassion that drives us to act in a way that seeks to alleviate suffering or offer comfort. Compassion involves not only understanding someone's pain, but feeling a deep, genuine desire to do something about it. Compassion is about caring. And this caring goes beyond just emotional understanding. It's about seeking to make a difference, no matter how small. in the lives of those who are struggling. Compassion often requires vulnerability. To truly care for someone else's well-being, we have to open ourselves up to the possibility of discomfort. It's easy to turn away when faced with someone's pain, whether that's because we're unsure how to help or because it makes us uncomfortable to face another person's suffering. But compassion calls us to sit with that discomfort and reach out anyway. It's about offering our time, our resources, or simply our presence, even when doing so doesn't come with an immediate or tangible reward. Compassion involves the willingness to be there for others, even if it means being vulnerable or exposed to their pain. One of the beautiful aspects of compassion is its ripple effect. When we show compassion to others, we not only help to ease their burdens, but we also contribute to creating a more compassionate world. Compassion encourages connection, understanding, and kindness. And these actions tend to inspire others to act in kind. Compassion creates a cycle of care and support that spreads from one person to the next, ultimately strengthening the fabric of our communities and relationships. It builds a culture where people are willing to go beyond their individual needs and make a collective effort to alleviate the suffering of others. Moreover, empathy and compassion are essential not just for our interactions with others, but also for how we engage with ourselves. Practicing self-empathy and self-compassion is crucial for our mental and emotional health. It's easy to be critical of ourselves when we make mistakes or face challenges, but being able to understand and validate our own emotions is key to self-growth. Self-compassion involves recognizing that we are human, that we will inevitably face struggles and imperfections, and that this is not only okay, but part of the journey. Rather than berating ourselves for our perceived shortcomings, we can choose to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we offer to others in times of difficulty. Furthermore, both empathy and compassion are learned skills. While some people may have a natural inclination toward these qualities, they can be cultivated over time with intention and practice. Becoming more empathetic involves actively seeking to understand the perspectives and emotions of others, even when it feels difficult or uncomfortable. It requires listening with an open heart and mind, setting aside judgment, and embracing the experience of someone else without the need to fix it or make it better. Likewise, cultivating compassion involves developing a sensitivity to the suffering of others and a genuine willingness to take action, whether that's offering support, advocating for those in need, or simply offering a kind word when someone is hurting. In many ways, empathy and compassion are foundational to building healthy, supportive relationships. Whether in personal or professional contexts, these qualities allow us to connect with others in a way that fosters trust, respect, and understanding. They also create an environment where people feel safe, valued, and heard. This is especially important in a world where individuals are often struggling with isolation, stress, and emotional pain. In the face of such challenges, empathy and compassion offer a way to bridge the gap between people, creating communities where emotional well-being and human connection are prioritized. Empathy and compassion also have the power to heal. When we offer these qualities to others, we help create spaces where emotional wounds can begin to mend. We acknowledge the pain, validate the experience, and offer the possibility of healing through understanding and support. Whether in the form of a listening ear, a kind gesture, or a more profound act of assistance, empathy and compassion have the power to restore hope and bring light to dark places. Ultimately, empathy and compassion are transformative forces. They have the potential to change not only the lives of those on the receiving end, but also the person offering them. When we practice empathy and compassion, we open ourselves up to a deeper understanding of the world and the people in it. We create spaces where vulnerability, connection, and healing can flourish. And in doing so, we contribute to a more caring, more compassionate world for everyone.